Welcome back to Low Budget Binge. As always, this is the place where you're going to check out films that you usually don't see at the movie theaters. I've been busy for the last couple of weeks. Part of it had to do with me selling my mother's house, and I had a movie released called Frankenstein's Bride from the Asylum. This is a film I wrote the script for, and the Asylum ambitiously tried to adapt it. It's always interesting to see how my scripts are adapted into the real world through the Asylum lens. Frankenstein's Bride can be viewed on demand on Amazon Prime and most other outlets. I'll let you know when you can watch it for free on Tubi. Also, I struck up a partnership with the website Fierce. I'll put the link to that site below. Fierce is a home for independent horror, and since they knew that I had quite a liking towards that side of horror, they invited me to post some of my reviews there. Don't worry, I am going to be compiling all of my reviews in an archive on my website, ML Miller Writes, and I'll also be posting my reviews here at ML Miller Frights still. So nothing has really changed, it's just another platform where you can check out my reviews. I'll also be doing some editorials and things like that there, so you might want to check that site out. I think that's enough updates for now, so let's start binging. Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. I'll indicate in the review down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. GRIZZLY Night is new on demand from Saban Films. It's directed by Burke, Doeren, and written by Bo Bean, Katrina Mathewson, and Tanner Bean. During the 1967 tourist season at Glacier National Park, Montana saw 2 separate bear attacks in one night. This is the true story of that terrible night. It's a dangerous night. I love a good man versus nature movie. Films like Night of the Grizzly and, of course, GRIZZLY are classics that highlighted the dangers of nature getting a little too close to civilization. But aside from the absolutely terrifying backcountry, which contains one of the most agonizing bear attack sequences this side of the bear documentary Grizzly Man, it seems to be difficult to make a good grizzly bear horror movie these days. I found Cocaine Bear to fail to live up to its entertaining premise, so with this GRIZZLY Night movie, it's a dangerous night. The night is a night. I was hoping for some of the grindhouse, gnarly bear horror of old. The film starts out promising enough. It's kind of amazing that parks used to bait bears to come near the tourist locations with trash piles, one of those details that really makes you wonder how the human race survived at all given the lack of attention to safety. These opening moments where tourists flock to cabins and get dangerously close to bears for photo ops were the most entertaining of the film. GRIZZLY Night
Don't slap his face, guys, please. I mean it.
Does a good job of highlighting the naivete of some people who think that nature won't bite back. Even the park rangers seem uninterested in safety protocols as they ignore warning signs that disaster is going to strike. But it's when disaster strikes, or more accurately, the bear strikes, that things begin to wobble. There's a nice sequence that occurs twice in the film for some reason. I guess it's because they needed a bear attack in the opener, so it makes a tiny bit of sense that we see the scene play out where 2 sleeping baggers are attacked by a grizz once before the credits, and then again in sequence later in the film. But it feels more like filler than a stylistic narrative choice. The way the bear is filmed is quite obvious. The actors were miles away from it during filming. I understand you couldn't have a real bear and the actors tussle about, but at least get the lighting and camera stock similar. The film isn't very bloody either, so you just get someone screaming at something tugging at her sleeping bag from off camera, and then a cut to the bear roaring for a treat from its trainer. Mixed together, this doesn't make for the most traumatic or terrifying of attack sequences. The biggest problem with GRIZZLY Night is that aside from one bloody swipe on the shoulder from one guy, the bear's body count is pretty low. Sure, I get it, the film wanted to be accurate to events that occurred in real life, but it builds to a climax that is lackluster to say the least, and to be more accurately, pretty cruel by today's standards. I understand it's protocol to put down a bear after an attack, but these final scenes lack any dramatic heft. It simply feels like they ran out of money and decided to explain the rest of the story through expositional paragraphs about bear safety before the credits. I mean, you're not going to win the audience over by killing a bear cub right before the credits. The film has some okay acting, The Mummy's Odin Fair is a vacationing doctor who helps treat some of the bear claw wounds. Final Destination Bloodlines, Breck Bassinger, is one of the not-so-happy but cute-as-a-button campers. Veteran actor Charles Eston plays a solid ranger. Everyone reads their lines well, though unfortunately, those lines feel pretty cliched. I think Grizzly Night...
I used to be a piece of shit. Spiked up blonde hair, little bitty jeans, chicken spaghetti at Ciccolini's.
would have been more effective if they might have depicted some of the grisly attacks throughout history in the area, rather than just focus on one night where a bear kills 2 people, or made more effort to make the few scenes of run-ins with the bear more intense through quick cuts and tight shots. It's funny that back in the day, someone wearing a bear suit could cause chills and screams due to some creative edits. It's great that a real bear was used, but if it can't go near the actors, its power really doesn't register. It doesn't help that the real grizzlies look emaciated as they dig through the trash at the cabins and don't match up with the size and girth of the performing bear used in close-ups. Grizzly Night...
I'm not a piece of shit. I used to be. People can change.
...is a man versus nature film that feels more like a docudrama than a horror film, as it seems like it really wants to tell a story accurately, but never considers that it needs to be entertaining too. I can't recommend this one. I reviewed NOSEEUMS a while back when it was touring festivals, and now it's new on demand from Quiver Distribution, Torchlight Studios, and Odin's Eye Entertainment. It's directed by Raven Carter, and written by Raven Carter, Jason Michael Anthony, and Hendreck Joseph. Ember, played by Aliga Burt, is a promising young anthropology student who recently broke up with her boyfriend. In order to forget her ex, she goes on a girls' getaway weekend at a lake house. But the nightmarish history surrounding the house seems to have a special connection to Ember and her own foggy past. NOSEEUMS is steeped in metaphor. Sometimes this metaphor is veiled, other times not so much. The film feels like it has a whole lot of things to say about race, culture, and America's not-so-great history. You see, Ember is a young black woman struggling with fitting into the modern world. At the beginning of the film, Ember has a short debate with her teacher involving privilege, opportunity, and systematic obstacles. Of course, it's Craven 101 that if something is talked about in a classroom in a movie, that means it's going to be one of the main themes. This is compounded with the fact that Ember was dating a white dude and has found herself friends with his friend set, a pair of white gals and an Asian gal as besties. Ember's best black friend dislikes it that Ember is going on this girls' weekend with her white friends, once again highlighting Ember's conflicted racial issues. As a story that examines these complex feelings about race, NOSEEUMS is surprisingly ripe with thematic heft. Even the title, NOSEEUMS, can be seen as a metaphor for the inner conflict, the small prejudices, and outright racism that Emma deals with on a daily basis, yet chooses not to deal with them as she feels they are inconsequential, like small bugs buzzing around her head. That's good and deep stuff, and even as a white dude, I found myself compelled by this conflict and concerned for Ember as a character. Aaliyah Burt is solid as Ember. She has an annoying habit of biting her lip and does it in pretty much every scene. While it may convey awkwardness, self-consciousness, and may sometimes even be kind of cute, it's distracting when she does it every time she's on screen. And she's on screen a lot. Burt is a good actress, conveying a lot of difficult emotions, though once I noticed this tendency, I couldn't unnotice it. The major problem is, and this is often a problem with movies with this heavy a social message, is that the message outweighs the horror, and that's definitely the case with NOSEEUMS. It's as if the filmmaker and her co-writers were so distracted with communicating this interesting bunch of issues Ember has to face that they forgot to make it all consistently scary. Director-co-writer Raven Carter does pepper in a few scenes that are legitimately stylized and sometimes palpably frightening, specifically some of the nightmare flashback sequences of real racial violence, but these are few and far between. Additionally, NOSEEUMS wraps up on a strange note with a lighthearted ending that not only undercuts the horror and drama that just occurred, but honestly should leave a bad taste in the mouths of most people leaving this movie. Had the horror been as prevalent as the message, I think I would have liked NOSEEUMS a whole lot more. Guillotine is available on demand from Amazon. It's directed by Ray Izad-Mehr and written by Ray Izad-Mehr, Nabor Cabanillas, Lisa Molenda, Melinda Molenda, and Sara, Vahabi. Guillotine tracks the strange, offbeat, and often grotesque history of the implement of death known as the guillotine through the ages, from its invention during the French Revolution all the way up to the fall of Saddam Hussein, where an antique guillotine was still used by Hussein's forces. The film is told in 5 short stories that span decades and occur in numerous parts of the world. This is a strange little nugget of a movie. Instead of focusing on a central protagonist, the film instead follows the guillotine as it is used through the ages, showing how this instrument of death represented different things to different regimes, seeing to the death of a variety of walks of life. This is a fascinating POV to follow as it gives a cross-section of how crime, law, sin, and punishment has, or in some cases hasn't, evolved through the ages. The 5 segments really highlight the range of Iranian-American filmmaker Ray Izad-Mehr as the narrative bounces through the ages in a sometimes jovial, yet occasionally more poignant way, starting with the French Revolution, where a group of political advisors search for a kinder, gentler form of capital punishment when a drunken axeman ends up gorily decimating someone's head during an execution. From that gruesome and whimsical entry point, the segments follow religious and political executions through the years. Adding to the whimsy of Guillotine is a modern soundtrack rather than one using music appropriate to the era the scenes take place in. It all adds up to a very odd film that keeps you on your toes as to whether it wants to make you laugh, puke, or even learn a little about this horrifying death device. Guillotine is less of a horror film than it is a macabre educational film, though it doesn't hold back on the gore and is downright funny at times. It's a strange one, and it won't be for everyone, but I was never bored with Guillotine. 4 20-somethings are abducted from a vacation home and find themselves chained to a wall and forced to play a sadistic game of death, all brought to you by a maniac known as Your Host, played by Jackie Earle Haley. Your Host is a mean-spirited film that one can't help but compare to the Saw series, as it basically has the same premise: a man inflicting revenge upon a world he feels has shunned him. While Saw has the subtle and soft-spoken John Kramer, played by Tobin Bell, Your Host has a more bombastic tone, and that's the main thing that sets the 2 films apart. While this is not usually the type of film I would seek out, the one redeeming factor to all of this carnage, and there's a lot of it, is the performance by Jackie Earle Haley. Haley is one of those actors that just oozes humanity. Watch any film he's in, his stare is filled with heartache and pain. His tragic turn in Little Children comes to mind, and even in an over-the-top film like Watchmen, allowed Haley to shine. I mean, how is Rorschach not the most sympathetic character in that entire film? Here, Haley has the same kind of wide-eyed wonder and excitement, like a kid playing with his favorite toys, though it's clear the road that has brought him to this torture dungeon of horrors is filled with grief and torment. Still, because this maniacal killer, which reminded me a whole lot of Bill Moseley's Chop Top from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, because the maniacal killer is being played by Haley, that humanity shines through, and it's the best part of Your Host. I'm curious how the messaging in Your Host is going to play out to filmgoers. It makes a firm statement about the Me Too movement and how it can be twisted in this complex and often cruel world. Despite the gore, the film does go to some ugly places, and I respect it for taking this kind of stance in the current cultural climate. Still, this is a film that's going to be divisive simply because it broaches a very sensitive topic. But I have to say, Your Host commits to the bit all the way through, and that's ballsy. The gore is going to be a turn on or turn off, depending on your tolerance for that sort of thing. And while I'm no prude to the gore, I must admit I was floored a time or two at the bloodfest on display in Your Host. There's one particular kill that is wonderfully played out and had me wincing the entire way through. At the same time, these 4 contestants and the way they argue and treat one another makes you wonder why the hell they are all together in the first place. But I think that's the point of the film, that no one is without sin and that sin needs to be punished. Your Host is not going to be for everyone. It definitely is carrying on in Saw's absence, and Healy's performance really elevates the entire thing. His rage and grief are palpable and makes the entire twisted show worth checking out. Those are 4 indie horrors you can chew on this week. I plan on posting quite a few to catch up after my absence for the last week, so be ready for a new video in a day or 2. Until then, let me know which one of these indie horrors look interesting to you and which ones you're going to skip down in the comments. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. Live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside that